Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I want to talk to you about multiple subjects today. Number one is the quick retaliation from Yemen following the airstrikes yesterday. Then updates from the ground on Gaza, the deal, where are we going to reach with this deal, and a statement from one of the resistance movements in Iraq regarding the US forces, which I'll start off with. So the leader of Al-Hashd al-Sha'bi in Iraq, the Popular Mobilization Forces, he said that we need to clean Iraq from any foreign presence. So obviously the US and the coalition withdrew most of its forces from Iraq, but there's still foreign presence, and this attack that happened on Iraq 2 days ago is probably going to accelerate them removing every single last one of them, despite the fact that America just announced that they're sending further soldiers to the region, 1,500. They declared that just a couple of weeks ago. With regards to Yemen, the Yemeni Ansarullah spokesperson, he said that our stance when it comes to Gaza is fundamental and it's based on principles following the airstrikes yesterday. And today, they began their retaliation, but it wasn't against the US and the coalition in the Red Sea. It was against Israel. So they launched multiple missiles on al-Rashrash or Eilat in southern Israel, alongside UAVs. And this just proves, yesterday we spoke about how these people are not deterred about the American presence and the attacks. And they just prove it day after day that they're acting out of principle to support the people of Gaza, the Palestinian people, and go out with whatever they can against this genocidal satanic death cult. And with regards to the movements that we're seeing in Yemen and Iraq, the US and its coalition, they can do whatever they want, but these people will continue attacking them. And the only thing that the US and the UK and their coalition are doing over there is adding fuel to the fire instead of dealing with the root cause of the problem, which is the genocidal Zionist supremacist regime in Israel. When it comes to Gaza, we've had a couple of statements from Abu Ubaidah, and we had a release from the PIJ, Saraya al-Quds, the armed wing of the PIJ. So with regards to Abu Ubaidah, he declared that Al-Qassam brigades destroyed wholly or partially 43 Israeli vehicles in total in less than a week. So we're talking about tanks, bulldozers, could be soldier carriers as well. And they attacked Israeli bases in mortar shells across Gaza. He also said that they killed 17 Israeli soldiers from zero distance, and some of them were sniped as well. But if we just focus on this announcement for a second, 43 vehicles in under a week, you're talking about the size of a brigade. The total number of Israeli tanks, bulldozers, soldier carriers destroyed in Gaza, only the vehicles, we're talking about over 1,100 since Israel started the ground invasion. This is a tremendous number. And again, these things are not highlighted in Western mainstream media because they don't want to show you the embarrassment that the Israeli army is going through in Gaza, and they don't want to show the military aspect of what's going on. They keep banging on about the 7th of October and all of the lies that are attached to the 7th of October that Israel committed, whether when it comes to the massacres with the revelers or them attacking their own citizens in the Israeli kibbutzes. We also had releases from Saraya al-Quds, the armed wing of the PIJ, and Kataib Abu Ali Mustafa brigades, the armed wing of the PFLP. They launched missiles on multiple Israeli bases in Gaza. So with all of this and with the restructuring of the civil side forces in Gaza from Hamas, you're again highlighting the freedom of movement, the resilience, the persistence of the Palestinian resistance, and the fact that despite all of this ongoing barbaric campaign from Israel, these people still have their forces intact. They're still in control of what's happening over the ground and under the ground. Now, with regards to Israeli forces, they did declare that they withdrew partially from multiple areas, and they had mass withdrawals from other areas as well. So particularly North Gaza, they withdrew most of their forces, and Khan Yunis. However, in some locations there have been retractions and other attacks. Now, at the moment, you're talking about primarily attack attempts from the northwestern part of Gaza City and from the northwestern part of Khan Yunis. So now they're focusing on a man called Izzuddin Haddad. This man is responsible for the Gaza City division or unit in Kata'ib al-Qassam brigades that belongs to Hamas. And according to Israel, he's in charge of the reorganizing, the restructuring, and the spread again of the Hamas forces in the northern part of Gaza. So I think the reason that they're mentioning this guy is the fact that they are still looking for a trophy. They're still looking for a sign of victory. I mean, it's becoming evident also to the Israeli people that they withdrew from most parts of North Gaza. Hamas is going back there. They're about to reach a deal, which I'm going to be talking about in a sec. And they want to say that, oh, look, we killed the head of the forces in that area, so now it's fine, we can reach a deal. Most likely that is the case. Now, many people won't be fooled by this. It doesn't matter how many people Israel kills, Hamas will pop out. They will bring another leader. They have people in place immediately to take over anyone who is assassinated. This whole campaign is nonsense, really. I mean, Israel killed the spiritual leader of Hamas, Ahmad Yassin. They killed many leading figures, political and military figures, Abdel Aziz al-Rantisi, many military wing leaders as well. Every time they kill someone, they bring someone even more determined. So this whole thing is an act for domestic purposes primarily, because Israel is struggling to reach a deal and the government is split, especially Benjamin Netanyahu, when it comes to a deal. I mean, we've had a very recent meeting, a government meeting, and again, it was filled with shouting, it was filled with swearing and infighting between the governments. So from the reports that we heard from inside of Israel, 4 members of the Likud, they were totally against a multi-stage deal when it comes to Gaza. One of these people is Avi Dichter, who is the previous head of the Shin Bet, and other members of the Likud. Now, they don't want a multi-stage deal because according to them, that would negatively affect the situation in Gaza and it would give Hamas more time. And some of these people are showing absolute willingness to completely empty out the Israeli prisons from Palestinian prisoners. People need to understand that. On the other hand, you have people who simply won't agree to that. And with regards to the war cabinet, we've had a recent statement from Benny Gantz, who was one of the key figures in the war cabinet. He wasn't in the government previously. He was the previous head of the IDF. But he released a statement saying, if there won't be a deal for Netanyahu's political purposes, we are immediately out of the government. So these people just prove the reports that were out previously about the tensions, about the split, about them potentially going out of the government. And it turns out that many of these reports were true, especially when it comes to the infighting and split between the Israeli army and the politicians in Israel. And this has been evident since the beginning of this war. I mean, Israel went into this genocide split. They had hoped that this war will unite them, but it caused even more deeper division. And it's evident again with the society in Israel. There were many videos published in Israel. One of them was with a person attacking family members of Israeli prisoners in Gaza who were protesting to end this genocide and release the Israeli prisoners and reach a deal with the Palestinians. I'm talking about actual fighting, beating, swear words. The police hits protesters in other locations as well. And these are Israelis against Israelis. So the level of split is really high. And many of you might ask now, well, if that's the case, what's the prospect of reaching a deal? It depends on a couple of things. Number one, Hamas haven't given their response yet. They still need to give their response if we are okay with going on with this, or if we have a proposal, they most likely will submit. They could have submitted this, but we haven't heard it yet. A proposal saying, we're fine with the guidelines, but you need to make sure that Israel withdraws completely, stops the war completely. Then we will start discussing whether it's going to be a multi-stage, one knock, the level of aid that goes into Gaza, the rebuilding, all of these things. Because the initial thing is stopping the war and Israel committing to a long-term ceasefire. And initially, that will lead to a permanent ceasefire. That's from Hamas side. But from Israel's side, most of it depends on Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu must make a decision. Will he stick with his ultra right-wing fascists, like many other politicians who are fascist in Israel, or he will go with the less right-wing people, like continue with Benny Gantz, or bringing Yair Lapid potentially to the government, and they will give some sort of a security for the government to continue after they reach a deal and not let it collapse immediately afterwards, because obviously Netanyahu is concerned about his political career. And I spoke about the other day the offer that was reported to be given to Yair Lapid, the head of the opposition, to take the position of Yariv Levin, who is the justice minister, the person who led the judicial reform moves and who's a very controversial figure in Israel. And if that's the case, then there's more potential for Netanyahu to continue his political career, because that would mean he's going to be backing down from the judicial reform. Now, there was somewhat of a gentleman's agreement between them to stop talking about the judicial reform during the war. But obviously people know the war must come to an end at some point. And when it does, they're going to have to talk about the judicial reform again. So that's something very crucial when it comes to the longevity of any potential government that might come in if Netanyahu agrees to go down that path, because there's also a risk of a split in the IDF. We saw them fighting the other day over aid going into Gaza, and the military police had to be involved. So will, for example, a division like Netzach Yehuda or the Eternity of Judea create a subgroup within the IDF and start fighting traditional IDF divisions like Giv'ati, for example, or Golani, right? These things are actual things that can make a massive difference. They're very factual and there's substantial evidence behind them. It's not like we're talking about a theory here. There's already so many reasons. They've had frictions between them previously. They had fighting between them. People had to interfere because the people that Netanyahu has in his government, particularly Ben Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, who took positions that deal with Israel's security, that traditionally is led by more state-like people, it's causing a lot of problems. These people are radical settlers. They want to expand the settlements. They're talking about settlements in Gaza. And I mean, we've even had Bezalel Smotrich, who is the finance minister, saying that the main cause of the 7th of October attacks on Israel is the fact that we didn't have settlements in Gaza. As if they had settlements in Gaza, they would be safe, like they're safe in the West Bank, although in the West Bank still they're facing resistance, despite the fact that you have the Palestinian Authority having very close security ties with them. So once Hamas submit their comments on this proposal, these guidelines that were reached in Paris, Netanyahu will have to make a decision. He will have to make a decision. He's going to either take his current government, the radical right wing, or the more less extreme portion of Israeli politicians that will accept an offer and try and reach somewhat of an agreement and comprehend the fact that Hamas will remain in Gaza and that Israel must withdraw completely. Because don't forget, previously, the head of the IDF, he appointed a person who was the previous defense minister called Shaul Mufaz to deal with what they call the day after in Gaza. This guy was in charge of the withdrawal from Gaza and the ending of the settlements in 2005. And when the head of the IDF proposed that, another fight broke out and they had to cut the meeting and they didn't reach any conclusion. So people need to understand that there's so much friction, that so many things need to be taken into consideration before we reach a deal. So these were the main things that I want to talk to you about today, and I will hopefully see you soon in the next video. Take care.